You told
Yeah.
me that you guys got sick and tired of running after your ice and you wanted to do something about it. So tell me what was happening and what did you end up doing?
Well, we had what I call the original crew, the old timers, when I started here. And we would clean ice and think everything was fine, but our building would go through warm times or cold times, and ice was either wet or too hard or all those stories. One of the ice makers came to me one day and said, I'm tired of the compressor room dictating what we do. It's controlling us. We're not controlling it.
And what did you think about that? Was that a reasonable statement?
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it too much. And I was like, well, let's play. Let's do something about it. If we're not happy, we're going to fix it.
Okay, so how was it running at the time?
Oh, we just basically had one temperature. There are other facilities that run at one temperature, but I'm going to say they're more insulated buildings. So they could get away with it more. We couldn't, you know. And of course, we didn't know a temperature was just a number to us. We knew the water froze, but we wanted the water to freeze when we wanted it to freeze. And so we started playing with temperatures.
Okay, so your temperature, your first temperature, where was that?
Oh, I think we were running a slab temperature of 14 or 15 degrees at the time, which was really cold even before we started the REALice system, you know. But we knew the water froze up pretty good, but we had very hard ice.
Okay, but
and it would
people,
chip and
hockey players love hard ice. Well, was it
yeah,
too hard?
the adult hockey players, the bigger boys, so the smaller guys that didn't weigh much, they had trouble on the ice because it was too hard. But we had a compressor room that we didn't realize, you know, it would run when it wanted to and didn't run. And, you know, we wanted to figure out why, you know, we wanted it to run when we wanted it to run, you know. So we played with brine temperatures and we played with slab temperatures. And we just sort of went back to basics for us as we warmed it up until we weren't freezing well. Then we dropped it back down to where it was freezing okay. And then we started working on brine temperatures to start the equipment when we wanted the compressor room to run. And that got better. You know, we understood it better.
You actually had a two-pronged system put into place where you started with slab and then went to brine, or the other way around? How did you manage that?
It sort of blended together because we played with the slab temperature. We didn't really know where to put the brine. When I took over, you know, we ran the brine at 12 and 14 and degrees. And I think we ran the floor at 15 and we just left, it was there. So we decided to see what happens if we change the temperatures. Will the equipment start when we wanted it to? And our line was we wanted to have the ice at a certain temperature for the skaters, but we also wanted the plant to start when we started to flood. We wanted the plant to start running.
Quite often, we know that ice makers will turn their plant down a degree or two before a big game, so that the compressors are already rocking and rolling and freezing up that water in between periods.
Yes, yeah. So we have it a little easier here. It's a single sheet arena. We have no junior teams, you know. We don't have a full house. We probably hold 400 people, you know. But the bigger facilities where you're, you know, you got 1,200 or 2,500 people in there, you definitely have to think ahead because the slab temperature might be good, but the surface temperature is going soft, warming up.
So you needed to add sensors, I guess, to your rink?
Yes. Well, we had brine sensors, but when we had our first chiller, flooded chiller swap, they put the sensors on the nose of the chiller, not in the header trench and where the brine lines were. So we would have compressors start up when the plant started. We had 3 compressors at that time. And then we'd go to 2 compressors and then down to 1 if that's where the setting was. But every time it started, 3 compressors would run. Yeah, so we moved the sensors back to the header trench and its cold environment on the feed and return lines, and everything went back to normal. So if we had it set for one compressor to run, one compressor would start.
And did you guys notice that there was a difference in your utility bills, or were you watching that, Fred?
Well, our first manager that was here, he turned into our Parks and Rec director later. I just said, we're playing and we're going to see what happens. And then he came back a couple of months later and said, oh, we see a difference on the utility bill. What are you doing? So
did it take you a little bit of courage then to start playing around with your temps?
Well, it was a teaching process for some of the guys and a learning process for me. And it was sort of like, if we don't try it, we won't know. So let's try it, see what happens. And if something happens, we'll know how to correct it. So we're all learning all the time. So we turned from ice cleaners into ice makers.
Where you actually knew what it was that you were doing. You think that you didn't really know it before?
We just thought it was just, you add water and the plant would run and away you would go, but all the scenarios didn't work out very well, for the amount of people in the building or the warm day it is outside. We didn't know whether to watch for that or not. Now we do, so the guys now will be thinking at minimum 4 hours ahead, what's coming down the road.
You were one of the first people to tell me that ice making is really an art, but I guess that's something that you learned a little bit later.
Why, we were too busy being Zamboni drivers and we were it. We drove Zamboni, we know everything. And we didn't know everything. We knew bits and pieces, but we learned. And it didn't take long to realize what we wanted. And we just had to figure out how to get there.
You were one of the early adopters of the REALice technology in Canada as well. I think that it was 2014. So that would bring it up to 7 years now that Fuller Lake has got REALice in there. And going to cold floodwater technology was also pretty scary. So you'd already sorted out your compressor issues by the time that REALice was in, or was that around the same time? Or
we got to know the compressor room pretty well before we started talking REALice. But what happened as the years went on, the bills added up. We needed to do something. It was getting expensive, so we needed to, where do we carve money from? How do we do this? We knew that we were running our compressor room as best we could for the ice, and still save some money. And the only thing we could do is sacrifice the quality of the ice to save more money, which we didn't want to do. And at that time, I think it was Fortis BC that had was working with REALice. I can't remember, they had 7 or 10 arenas, test subjects, I called them, on the island and on the mainland, trying out the REALice system. So my boss at the time said, let's watch this and see where it goes. And I think the deal was with Fortis was they put the REALice system in. They had to send a lot of information to Fortis to show how many degrees can you warm up, and still get away with everything. What's your energy consumption? And all this stuff went into Fortis. When we looked at it, it was, this looks pretty good. So we were still at this, oh my goodness, cold water, I don't know. But we decided to go with it. So, and that's what we did.
And I guess that's when you also started raising your ice temperatures more.
Yeah. So, we talked with Florian and we got it set up and we got it put in, and I realized had a really nice instruction sheet, do this and run these temperatures. And so I went to the guys, and some of them were still the old timers that didn't want to go along with this very well. And I said, well, let's really beat this stuff up. So what I did was I set the instruction sheet aside and I said, we're going to do everything we can and see what happens. Well, if we run it warmer, what'll happen? If we run it colder, what'll happen? We're not going to follow the instructions. And it worked out that the REALice system was very forgiving. It worked out very well. And we learned it was working. That's the bottom line. We had to adopt our cleans. We drive a little bit slower. which we should have been driving slower anyway. You know, we ran our water temperatures a little warmer. When it's cold outside, the inside of our arena is like a freezer. So it was very cold. So we warmed the water up, but we also started raising the slab temperatures up. During the days where we weren't too busy, we would warm the slab temperatures up and we would do our ice maintenance and we would watch to see what would happen. You know, so we get to a point where it's not freezing up very fast. Let's drop the temperatures down. We probably went from 15, 16 degrees slab temperature to we were bouncing 20, 21. I didn't know how long we would have it. You know, will this work year after year? After 2 years, I went to our staff and I said, well, maybe we can make a decision. Do we want to keep doing this or don't we? And the staff said, they said, we didn't even think about it. We just do it. Why would we change? So we've carried on with it since. I think the biggest thing was when the test was going on with the other arenas, some of the arenas didn't tell the user groups that they were using cold water floods. And then in the end, they did. A year later, we started. After a year of running cold water floods, our figure skating coach came to us and she was really upset about the other arena and it was terrible ice and it was obviously due to the cold water floods. So our ice maker said, well, we do the cold water floods. And her jaw hit the ground. She said, well, why does it work here? And I said, well, it's not the cold water floods, but your figure skating at that arena follows a junior hockey practice, probably. So your ice isn't really in good shape, you know, but it's not the cold water floods. So, and we had a couple of, Doug Bodger and a few people skate here. We didn't tell them about it. We just kept asking, what do you think of the ice? And finally he said, why do you keep asking me this? It's, you know, I like the ice, what's wrong? So we told him. He said, I never would have known. So those two little things told me on the user group side is it's working. So 7 years later, here we are. Who would have thought that, you know?
How old is the Fuller Lake Arena?
It's a centennial arena, built in 67. First use was, I think, September 68.
What is your advice to operators who are, you know, a little bit hesitant about the technology, and municipalities who, you know, on one side, they understand that they could be saving some money, but they think that maybe the ice quality isn't going to be up to par?
Well, they're coming out with a lot of weird and wonderful ways. Some of the bigger facilities may be looking at different ways to save money, heat recovery or lighting or anything along there. But I still think this is a good way to go to supplement that cost saving on the ice. That first year we were running the REALice system and we got our temperatures dialed in pretty close to where we wanted them. And sometimes I live close to the rink. I'd go home for lunch and I'd come back and our condenser wasn't running. Our condenser always ran, you know, so I'd go down to the compressor room and look at everything. And, you know, of course, the compressors aren't running. Why aren't the compressors running? They always run, you know, till I realized the temperatures are satisfied. They're quite happy. You know, the ice cleans are happening. They're healing up in no time at all. Everything's working. It took me a while to get used to that the plant just doesn't run as much as it used to. And that's a cost saving. Now we're upgraded to 2 bigger compressors instead of 3 smaller ones. And we're idling along on 1 compressor. You know, on the warmer days, 2 compressors may run for a while. Most of the time, just 1 compressor. And it's working. So that kind of stuff. But, you know, to try the REALice system, be brave and try it. You know, the guys that were here when I was here, some of them have moved on to other positions. The new staff that come in, they just don't blink. They just keep going, you know. Some of them have come from other rinks that already have the REALice system, cold water floods. You know, it is no different. Just get on a Zamboni and do a clean. You know, when we started, there wasn't too many rinks we could go to say, "Is this working? How much money are you saving?" You know, but now there's not too many rinks around us that don't have it. You know, there's going to be a rink. Go talk to them. Go look at it. You know, Nanaimo came down to us to have a good look at it. You know, and I'm sure they talked to the bosses. It's a bit above my pay grade, but they were probably looking at cost savings. What did we save, and what did we used to be, and what are we now? Which was a learning curve for us. I don't think we really used to track it too much. We just paid the bills. You know, nothing ever changed till we found out we could knock those numbers down quite a bit. So it's silly not to have a look at it. You know, I think we're proving that it's working quite well. And get out there and try it. That's all I can say. If you're not going to look at it, Colleen, you're missing the boat. That's all.